Now, let's talk about just intonation and sound design, shall we? Now, when I look at intonation versus temperament, what we're talking about, how do we divide these two notes up? How is the distance between these two notes divided? How do we space these notes? Sometimes this depends on how many notes we have, but past a certain point, we generally agreed upon approximately 12 pitches. There was more if you followed some systems, but we had C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and C. In some places, you also had C, C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G flat, because this is what temperament is referring to, or intonation is referring to, is whether or not there is a difference between D sharp and E flat or not. Equal temperament says these two notes are gonna be the same. D sharp is E flat, is D sharp, is E flat. In more just temperament or just intonation systems, there will be a slight difference between C sharp and D flat. If you want to know more about this, there is actually a really good YouTube video. I will warn you, it has a really old Renaissance drawing of a person, or I think it's a statue of David or something. So you'll see like a penis. It's not a real penis, it's a sculpture penis, but that's definitely something that I want to keep an eye on. But if you look for early music sources on YouTube, they have a really good video on temperaments and what that means. That's what we're all going to talk about. And yeah, you got to be careful because there is a penis in there, and I don't want to get banned by Twitch for having penises on my screen while I'm streaming. But what it talks about between just intonation and temperament and all that stuff is how quote-unquote pure this perfect fifth is in relationship to the harmonic overtone series of a sound, which we'll show you. And again, how we divide these octaves so that are these notes the same? When we look at our piano, most music that we listen to is in what we call 12-tone equal temperament. You will also see it referred to sometimes as 12-tone equal division of the octave, or EDO, but that's very wordy. So from now on, when I talk about these, I'm going to be talking about 12 ET or 12 TET. I'm going to use 12 equal temperament or 12 ET because the first middle tone is kind of implied there, but 12 TET is, I believe, the more scientifically accurate way of referring to it. But 12 ET, the standard equal temperament that we use, takes this note right here and this note right here, and it considers them the same pitch, but double in frequency. If this is vibrating at, say, 800 hertz, this is vibrating at 1600 hertz. How do we split up each of these notes? Well, in terms of their ratios, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but this is essentially 1/12 in terms of percentages. This is 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, scaled proportionally across the piano. So this 1/12 frequency distance is the same as this, is the same as this. They're just kind of shorter because it's proportional. And all of these are completely identical. Now, I'm going to load up my trusty friend Contact. Contact is a sample library and a sampler that has a lot of extended features. It's really useful for things like this. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this piano called the Giant. It's just a nice little piano. Sounds pretty much the same as the piano we just used. Each note is the same. It's all going to sound the same. If I click this little icon right here to go into the editor for this library, I go to the script editor, you can see there's all these panels which have all the little buttons and knobs and things that let it work. You can see we have this thing that controls the resonance of it, the release, the repedal, and then we have this one that says empty. It's empty because there's nothing there, obviously. That does mean, though, we can add stuff. I'm going to go to these presets. Under the factory presets, they have this thing called tuning. Under here, we have this thing called micro tuning or dynamic pure tuning. Let's do micro tuning. Listen to what happens when I just play. Well, first I'm going to turn this amount off. You have it in your head. Now listen to what's different. Ooh, that sounds very different. So what we have is called a pure intonation, which is supposed to mean the distance between these notes and where they would exist in the harmonic overtone series is going to be locked in. So now, it's all going to be the same across the octaves, but that has some unintended consequences. So, this is a major chord using pure intonation. Do you hear the very slight difference between that note and that note? You hear the difference? This is almost imperceptible, but because yeah, the E, our major third, is actually shrinking. That is the normal, pure quote unquote intonation, or just, it's not technically just, but this is the pure intonation of a major chord. Now, let's try and play a minor chord based off our third. Ooh. Let's compare that with the equal tempered. Ooh. Stark contrast there. Feels a little bit crunchier, right? Doesn't it feel a little bit more tense? Comparing that to this. This feels a little bit less tense to me. And that's because now we have ratios that have been stretched, like this E flat and this A flat, and ratios that have been shrunk, like this G flat right here, or this F sharp. So now watch what happens when I play this G flat major chord. Ooh. Compare that with the pure one. Ooh. Feels really tense for a major chord, right? Feels really agitated almost. And exactly, we're dealing with something called the wolf fifth, which is what happens when F sharp is no longer the same as G flat. their pitches are going to be different, even though we have them in the same position on the keyboard. So, personally, I actually kind of like that tonality. It has a lot of emotional drive to it. So we have a few other tuning systems here. You can see, if I'm remembering correctly, pure intonation or pure tuning is supposed to be the same as just intonation, which again is supposed to be the harmonic overtone series. Now, all of this talk, but we haven't talked about the second half of this conversation. What about sound design? How does this relate to sound design? Well, as I've been alluding to, this is following the harmonic overtone series. So let's get my good friend Faceplant. I'm going to grab a sine wave, and I'm going to grab a spectrum analyzer. And we're just going to look at these harmonic overtones. Let's go down here to the bass. One more. So here's our lowest note. Here's harmonic 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, going up. It goes all the way up to, I think, about 70. Yeah, so these are the first 70 harmonic overtones of a sound. This is the note F. This is also the note F. This is also the note F. Notice how I skipped one. This is not, but this is also the note F. Notice how I'm skipping more notes. Did you do +1 semitone? No. I was using harmonic. That funny little friend right there, the harmonic multiplier, which is just bringing us up the harmonic overtone series. Now, here's a little trick. Every odd harmonic is a new note. The question becomes, which note is it? And how close is that note to our overall scale that we write music in, to kind of link these ideas together, right? So, this uses pure mathematical ratios. So if I play the note A, this A is vibrating at 55 cycles a second. If I multiply 55 by 2, I get 110. If I multiply 55 by 4, I get 220. If I multiply 55 by 5, I get 440. Keep that number in mind. 440. This will come back. Just the odd harmonics, yes. Because we're doing some basic math here. If I multiply 55 by 3, what do I get? Let's clear this up. 55 multiplied by 3. 165. Looks like at about 165, we get the note E. 3 is an odd number. 1 is an odd number. 5 is an odd number. So what is 55 times 5? Or excuse me, I think 55 times 6 is what I messed up with earlier for the next octave for 440. This is 275. So what is 275? That's probably around here. Okay, so 275 is there. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and actually play A up at the 3rd and the 5th harmonic. was doing the wrong one. So there's our point. There's 275. Solid. Now, I'm going to play that up against another one of these that's going to be playing that exact same C sharp. So, go all the way down here. Play this. Oops. Legato this. There we go. So now, we have that note looping. Now, I'm assuming that I'm going to play the same exact note. I'm going to set this to 1. I'm going to pull this up here. Okay. Something sounds a little bit off, though. Why does this sound a little bit strange? Something feels like it's going to be weird here. So I'm playing that note. I'm playing that C sharp right there. This is the same note that we're playing in here. So what's gonna happen here? Sounds the same, right? What's gonna happen when I play them together? Does anyone know? I'll give you a hint. If I take this and I duplicate it, and I set these to say, let's take this. This is at -12. This is at -12. I add them together. I get -6. It doubles in volume when you have the same signal. Now what's going to happen when I add this in? Why is it not? I mean, it's getting louder, obviously, but why is it not? Why is it not the same here? Okay, so let me show you all something. Let's look at this thing right here. So this is the list of all of the notes in our scale. So we're looking at C sharp 4, right around here. So C4 is oh wow, there's a lot of decimal places here for some reason. So this note right here is the note that I want to play. 293.67. Hold on one second. 55 times 5 is 275. Why is this not 275? Something weird is going on here. Well, thankfully I already explained it earlier because we're making, thank you Sam, we're making compromises. We shrunk down the distance between the notes when we have them in one octave in order to make sure that we have an equal distance in between each note in the octave. So when you're sound designing, there is technically a difference between this right here and this right here. Notice how the waves seem to our eyes almost identical. It looks almost identical, but as we just saw, it's not identical. When placed together, they just phase cancel in some way. They're beating against each other. Excuse me. So, how does that apply to our sound design? Well, I will say this does actually explain why Serum sounds different from most other FM synthesizers. So, can anyone tell me how I would do this in Serum? How, if I wanted to FM from the third harmonic inside of Serum, how would I do that? I actually don't have Serum reinstalled on my computer right now, so I can't quite show it off myself, but we can pull up the thing, open up the wavetable editor. So without having to do that, right? Because I'm trying to do this with a sine wave. I don't want to have to change the actual wave. How would I do this right here? Yeah, so what you would do is you would go to this thing right here, and you would set this up to get it to the correct value. So +1 octave, and what did we say? +7 semitones. Yeah, you would bump the semitones up to 7. But as we just figured out, there is a difference between the third harmonic and 1 octave and 7 semitones of difference. We can calculate the exact difference using that chart I fucking forgot to keep up because I'm an idiot. So 277, there it is. I was looking at the wrong one. So this is C, this is D, so 277. So we are exactly 2.18 hertz off when we are using this method. But it sounds fine. So it's not like this is bad. And this is where the just intonation things comes in. Because sure, I can do this, and when I'm doing harmonic ratios, I am technically doing sound design with just intonation. Because this is going to follow what the just intonation scale would place for those specific note values. But I can also do this. And I can get a similar but slightly different effect for variations. Like I could imagine, for example, I have this patch right here. Let's try just building a basic wub patch. I'm going to have 2 different wubs, both based on the same sort of thing. So let's set this up to adjust the phase a little bit. I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to do the same thing here. So now if I change these, notice it's a very, very slight difference. It's almost like this one's what I would call a little bit rounder. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to create some basic wubs. Whoops, I'm opening too many things. Let's just grab a one shot, just a little wub. I'm going to attach this to the volume here, make this as unipolar. Set this up like so. Make this a little bit, you know, a nice little wub. Turn this off and do the same thing here. So now all I really want to do is attach 2 macros. One to turn this one on, one to turn this one on. And now, or I guess, that's fine. Now we have adjusting to, I could probably do this better. Hold on, I could probably do this better. Can I do minus? No, okay. So there's definitely a way to do this, but actually that actually gives me an idea, because I'm hearing something interesting here. I noticed, because this is cool. This is cool too. But listen to what it does when they interact together. I'm not touching anything. The phases of the 2 oscillators are canceling each other out inside the FM. I was not expecting this. Notice. It's quieter. So you could theoretically change your FM to have its own built-in modulation, by reducing the amount UFM and duplicating it and then trying to replicate it not just in terms of harmonic overtone, but also in terms of the closest equivalent 12-tone equal temperament pitch. I did not think of that. That was just me trying to make it show that there's a slight difference in timbre, which there is. But this is kind of what I mean. Like, playing with temperament is not as strict as only using one, only using the other. It's like, well, what does it mean to write music with equal temperament? What does it mean to sound design with equal temperament? Other things to keep in mind, like if I'm doing stuff like, let's say I have a harmonically complex sound. Let's make like a little pluck real quick. Just a nice little pluck that we can make from melodies and stuff. Let's say I want this to sound a little bit more realistic, right? A little bit more like a physical instrument. I'm going to use a resonator here. You can see kind of layering these together. You can get some weird tones. But see how this says A4? Do you remember when we first started off and we were going up from that low A note, multiplied A by 2, by 4, by 8, and 55 times 8 is 440? Well, if we go back to this, A4 is at exactly 440 hertz. Exactly 440 for the note A4. So if I grab a note tracking device and I set this to the resonator pitch, which is at A4, sounds really cool. I could even make it be affected per note. Welcome back, Em. Yeah, and you get a very chiptune kind of sound. If you took something that maybe had a little bit more texture to it and you put like a saw wave through it, like instead of a saw wave, it would sound a little bit more like a physical instrument. But we can also change this, right? So let's set this down to E. Now, this is going to follow the equal tempered position, even if we do other stuff. Now, I think there is a way to set this to not follow it, but I don't know exactly how to adjust this to follow for equal temperament, but it might be possible. But, you know, looking at things like if you wanted to make this yourself, for example, you could try attaching this here and then tuning this to a harmonic multiple. So like, let's set this 440 times 3. I'm going to set this to 1320. Right? So now this should follow exactly on that perfect fifth. Which means it's cutting out those frequencies, and we can even like start stacking these to get a little bit of feedback going. Oops. Now we're getting a bit harsh. Pardon me. So I should probably do this. Hold on. Let me do this inside of a snap heap, because then we can control it. Let's do comb filter. Let's, what did I say? 1320. Right? So that 440 times 3. Whoops. 440 times 3. 1320. Okay. Oops. Whoops. Calm down. 1320. All right, now I'm going to set the mix on these. Actually, I'm gonna do this way. So this is gonna be how we do resonance control. Actually, I wish there was a way to scale it in here, but they don't have that yet. But what you could do is you could like stack turning these up to add resonance. So like I could set this here as mix, and then I could do like here for like resonance x2, then duplicate this and do resonance x4 on that as an example. Oops, okay. Resonance x4. And now that's kind of wild. But it does kind of sound like a comb filter or like a resonator. And it's very formaty. It's definitely very phasey, but yeah, a poly's on, so each voice is getting this. Whereas now each note, I'm gonna change it a little bit. And also I could set these back to 440 and it would probably change a little bit more. That sounds kind of crunchy. CPU is freaking out there. But, you know, you can play around with it. If you are able to use the contact editor here, you can actually use this on any sound. So like, let's get like a vocal sample, for example, just to continue on this topic. Vocal C. I just want like a vocal chop that's in the note C.
Come on. Can I get humming past crowd?
Fuck it. Good enough. All right, close enough. Okay, so all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make this more plucky. That's all I really cared about. I just wanted it to sound like a pluck. Which is also a really, really good way to get some cool sounds. I know. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go to the script editor here. And I just wanted to, no, I don't want to bypass it. I just want to add that tuning preset. I'm not sure if it's actually working though. But it should work. And if not, you can play around with it. But I got it working before. It might just be the sample. But anyways, it's fun to play around with. Like I would experiment if I were you with like take a sound you like, right? Take any sound you like a sample or a patch, and just like print out, you know, a couple of different notes. Make your own sampler instrument, basically. Like let's make a quick sampler, and this will probably be the end of the subject because I want to keep moving forwards. But let's just make something that's like it's playing different notes. I'm gonna do C. I'm just gonna go up the octave, basically. here. And just do this up 3, do this up 3, do this up 3, do this up 3, do this when we're done. Alright, so I'm just making a sound real quick. I'm actually gonna pull this down to a low octave, because you could think of this as like a bass or anything. I know I get a lot of bass people in here. And then you could start to split this up into a contact patch, right? Like you could freeze and flatten this, drop this in here, and start editing this together where it's like the map. You could start taking the sound and start patching it up, and then apply that into here, where it's like, you know, go put this on. Oops. Surprised it's not playing now. Oh, did I take it off? I'm surprised it's not working. It should be working. It used to work, but I'll have to figure out what I'm doing wrong here. Oh, maybe it just can't be on this first one. Maybe it just can't be on this first one. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong. I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but I know you can get this to work, but I haven't worked with contact libraries in a while. But I used to be able to just load in a thing and it would just micro-tune it, but... Oh no, it's working. It's just subtle. Here. So it is working, it's just very subtle. But you could play around with that, maybe do some like just intonation rhythm. That's all I was trying to do, honestly. But let's keep moving on.